Welcome back to the School of Buddha. I'm a fellow student from the land of Buddha, and today we're exploring a profound concept at the heart of Buddhist philosophy, dependent origination, or Pratītyasamutpāda. This teaching reveals how everything in life is interconnected and how our experiences are shaped by a continuous chain of causes and conditions. In understanding dependent origination, we begin to see the intricate web of relationships that govern our lives, helping us move beyond simplistic ideas of self and other. Dependent origination teaches us that nothing exists independently. Everything we experience, thoughts, emotions, events, arises in relation to other factors. This is a powerful realization because it challenges the notion of a fixed self and reveals that our lives are influenced by a complex web of causes and effects. By understanding this interconnectedness, we can break free from patterns of suffering and begin to live with greater awareness and compassion. The concept of dependent origination is often represented in a series of 12 links, each representing a stage in the cycle of suffering and rebirth. These links form a continuous loop, showing how ignorance and craving lead to actions, which in turn shape our experiences. But dependent origination isn't just about rebirth. It's a map of how we create our reality in each moment, based on the causes and conditions we engage with. Let's begin by exploring the first link, ignorance. Ignorance, in Buddhism, doesn't mean a lack of knowledge in the conventional sense. Rather, it refers to a fundamental misunderstanding of reality. We fail to see the impermanent, interconnected nature of all things, clinging to the idea of a permanent self and seeking satisfaction in temporary experiences. This ignorance is the root of the entire cycle, setting the stage for all the other links. The next link is mental formations. These are the patterns of thought, intention, and emotion that arise from ignorance. For example, when we misunderstand the nature of self, we create desires, attachments, and aversions, which shape our actions. Mental formations are like seeds that, when nourished by ignorance, grow into behaviors and reactions that perpetuate the cycle of suffering. Following mental formations, we have consciousness. Consciousness is the awareness that allows us to perceive and respond to the world. However, this consciousness is conditioned by ignorance and mental formations, meaning it's clouded by our attachments and aversions. Rather than experiencing reality as it is, we see it through the filter of our conditioning, reinforcing the cycle. The fourth link is name and form, which refers to the physical and mental components of our being. Name represents our mental characteristics, thoughts, emotions, memories, while form represents our physical body. Together, name and form create the experience of an I, reinforcing the illusion of a separate self. This I becomes attached to the body and mind, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, further binding us to the cycle. The six sense bases come next, representing our faculties of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and thinking. These senses allow us to interact with the world, but they also create a sense of separation. When we see, hear, or touch something, we think of it as separate from ourselves. This creates a duality of self and other, feeding the illusion of a distinct, isolated self. The next link is contact. Contact occurs when our senses meet an object, creating an experience. For example, when we see a beautiful flower, our sense of sight contacts the flower, creating the experience of seeing. This contact gives rise to sensation, drawing us further into the cycle of reaction and attachment. After contact, we have sensation, the feeling of pleasure, pain, or neutrality that arises from contact with an object. When we experience pleasure, we want to hold on to it. When we experience pain, we want to push it away. Sensation is one of the key points where attachment begins. Rather than simply experiencing life as it is, we categorize sensations, reacting with craving or aversion. This brings us to the eighth link, craving. Craving is the desire for things to be a certain way. When we crave pleasure, we chase after experiences, people, or possessions, thinking they will bring lasting happiness. But craving is insatiable. It fuels a cycle of desire and disappointment as the objects of our craving inevitably change or fade. From craving, we move to clinging. Clinging is the intensified form of craving, where we not only desire something, but attach our identity to it. We might cling to a relationship, a job, or an image of ourselves. This clinging creates a sense of possessiveness, reinforcing the illusion of a separate self that owns things or experiences. The next link is becoming, which refers to the process of forming a new identity based on our attachments. When we cling to something, we create a sense of, I am successful, I am loved, I am in control. This identification strengthens the cycle, creating a rigid sense of self that we feel the need to protect and uphold. Following becoming, we encounter birth. Birth represents the formation of a new identity based on our attachments and actions. Each time we identify with something, an achievement, a belief, a relationship, we give birth to a new version of ourselves. But with each birth comes the inevitable experience of aging and death. This final link reminds us of the impermanence of all things. Every identity we form will eventually dissolve, leading to sorrow, lamentation, and ultimately, the cycle beginning anew. Understanding these 12 links can seem overwhelming, but at its core, dependent origination is a way of seeing how each moment arises in response to the previous one. Our thoughts, actions, and experiences are all interconnected, part of a larger web of causality. By recognizing this interconnectedness, we begin to see that suffering isn't caused by isolated events or people. It's the result of patterns that we can change. The beauty of dependent origination is that it not only shows us how suffering arises, but also reveals how it can end. The cycle can be broken by intervening at any point, particularly at craving, clinging, or ignorance. When we bring mindfulness to these moments, we create space to respond rather than react, gradually unraveling the causes of suffering. One powerful practice for working with dependent origination is mindfulness. When we're mindful, we observe our thoughts, sensations, and reactions as they arise. We can notice when craving appears, or when we begin to cling to an idea or feeling. By observing these patterns without attachment, we interrupt the cycle. Imagine a situation where you feel a strong craving, perhaps for recognition or approval. In that moment, mindfulness allows you to see the craving without acting on it, creating space for a new response. Compassion is another practice that supports the breaking of the cycle. When we understand that all beings are bound by this web of causes and conditions, we develop empathy. We see that others suffer in the same way, bound by their attachments and aversions. This understanding deepens our compassion, leading us to act with kindness and patience. Let's try a simple mindfulness exercise to experience dependent origination. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths, bringing your awareness to the present moment. Notice any sensations in your body, perhaps the feeling of your breath, the weight of your body on the chair, or any areas of tension. Now, observe your thoughts as they arise. Notice how one thought gives rise to another, creating a chain of reactions. Perhaps a sensation leads to a thought, which leads to a feeling, which leads to a new thought. As you observe this chain, you're witnessing dependent origination in action, the way each experience arises in response to the previous one. As you go about your day, try to notice moments when you're caught in craving or clinging. Perhaps you feel the urge to check your phone for a message or reach for a snack when you're not hungry. In that moment, pause and observe the sensation. Notice the craving without acting on it. This small act of mindfulness begins to unravel the cycle, creating space for freedom. The teaching of dependent origination reminds us that we're not isolated individuals, but part of a vast web of relationships and causes. Every action we take affects the world, just as the world affects us. When we live with this awareness, we approach life with greater responsibility and compassion. We see that our thoughts, words, and actions are part of a larger tapestry, and we choose to act in ways that create peace and harmony. Thank you for joining me on this journey through dependent origination. I hope this episode has offered you insight into the interconnected nature of existence and has inspired you to approach life with mindfulness and compassion. If you like this content, please like and subscribe to the channel. Comment below your experiences with our videos. In our next episode, we'll dive into the nature of consciousness in Buddhism, exploring how awareness itself is shaped by the causes and conditions we engage with. Until then, may you find peace in the interconnectedness of all things.